turn it down, turn it down, turn it down. It would still kick back in, and then it just like it never shut down. And it's like, I can't sleep this way, so I ended up.
Is it one of those?
Yeah, the big old clunky in the middle of the room, or along right under the windows, and so I guess it's sensing the cold
And
coming
you
from
don't
the
have
window.
glass in there, do you?
Pardon?
Glass? You don't have any? Yeah, you probably got something for there.
Yeah, I mean, tell you what, for the difference,
Sit your coffee
should have
pot
saved
on.
$25 a night going to the travel lodge that I can literally see from the parking lot of where I'm staying. Now, if I had realized that it was that close, because on the map it looked further away, and I didn't think the travel lodge would be within walking distance, but the travel lodge is $25 a night cheaper. And I don't know that I'm getting $25 a night more in services where I'm at. They have a little coffee maker and a microwave and a little mini fridge. Well, that's nice, but they don't tell you, they don't give you the coffee.
Oh.
And it's a Keurig little
They have
thing.
like a little package there for 'em?
They look like they got a holder for it, but there ain't nothing in it. And so I like let them know, need coffee and supplies. Didn't get any.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up
Meticulous
going
detail.
to Giant and buying my own, which, but again, they don't give you the shampoo, they give you the soap, but they don't give you the shampoo or anything like that. Again, luckily I brought my own.
And have
Which
your
hotel
own
is this?
shampoo?
Yeah, I brought all my own, but usually hotels have the little
Yeah, yeah,
complimentary
yeah.
ones. No, they have the bar soap. That's all they had. No
they should-
tissues.
Somebody
No
didn't
box of
service
tissues?
your room
No.
correctly.
Yeah, it just, so
Which-
I said,
Oh, that should have been
Which hotel?
included.
it's the Town Motel right over here on the corner of, I guess it's
Oh.
North Washington Street. And anyway, but I thought the Travel Lodge was further south, but I came out the other night and I'm like, hey, there's the Travel Lodge. It was only $60 a night. I should have stayed there because what the type of lack of is what I expected at the $60 hotel.
Is that a Holiday Crown? Is that?
There, I don't know, there's a
Crown
Holiday Inn,
Plaza.
there's a Crown, there's a Sheridan Suites or something over here, and
You get premium rates here because you're only hop, skip, and jump to the district, so people stay here in Old Town and then
right,
taxi up
yeah.
to the district.
And had I driven this area prior to the class and actually physically gone to where some of these are, there was, I forget, it's over on Route 1, and could have potentially been coming against the traffic. And it was only on Priceline anyway, it was only like $40 a night. I don't know what rating it
Gotta
was.
watch those.
Exactly, because I don't want to be in a Roach Motel or the bad part of town or whatever.
I live at hotels, so
Yeah. But since work wasn't
What do you stay
reimbursing
with the
me,
major chains?
no. All depends on who's paying for it and how much money and if it adds up and if it doesn't add up. And I've stayed in $20 a night hotels and I've stayed in $200 a night hotels and there's you know, so actually some of the cheaper ones, if they're not vacant, you can get a real good night's sleep there, even though it's only 20, 30, 40 bucks. And then I've been in $200 hotels where I just thought, why would I ever come here?
Mhm.
So it all depends.
One of the things that took me to get used to was, I don't hear traffic noise out where I'm at. And so to hear the motorcycles and the cars and the trucks, and they start at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even stop till like midnight. I ended up the first night turning the TV on and leaving it on low just to counteract the traffic noise because I would wake up hearing the sudden noises. So at least the TV was constant, but I don't hear traffic out where I'm at. So it was just kind of an acclimation. Excuse me.
All life can be noisy
Bless
too.
I sleep through it all.
Give yourself a few years. You get up closer to our age. You'll wish.
I've never really been like a sleeper, like someone who just slept all the time. Don't get me wrong, I can go down for 12 hours, no problem. But I don't really like to sleep my life away. It's like once a month.
Yeah, despite what they say, I think I find, for me, my body chemistry is more comfortable with about 6 hours of sleep as
Okay.
opposed to 8. Because
Yeah, I'm
it's almost
about
the
right
more I
around
sleep,
6.
the worse I feel.
Yeah.
Like you can't get the energy
Yeah, I'm about
started.
6.
Yeah.
They say you're supposed to have 8, but who needs 8 hours of sleep? Sleep when you're dead.
Well, other than,
That's why they call it
Kids
eternal
are-
rest, right?
you know, who need it, but as adults, I think your body's acclimated to whatever it needs.
Alright, so today we get to do some fun gap analysis. This is another underprivileged another underprivileged area where I find that people just aren't really focusing on what they need to focus on. Foundations here are going to be FIPS 199 and FIPS 200. 860, which is relatively new, and then 53. What document is NIST 853?
That's controls.
Controls.
How well do we need to know these documents chapter and verse for the CAP test?
I mean, to be
I mean,
quite,
other than a general outline and.
if I had it my way, you know, I would just say, let's print out all the documents and let's just go through and eliminate all the noise and the overhead and the high level language, and then just dig into what the purpose of these documents are. And you'll understand it a lot better. A lot of the coursework is wrapped around that whole process, but as you're going through any courseware, it's like that's ultimately what you have to dig through. So if you really understood what this wanted, or what the standardization, what they wanted the standardization to be, life ultimately will be a lot easier for you. Especially if you want to go the route of FITSE, then it's really detailed into the NIST documents.
I mean, I have copies, I don't know if I have 60, but I have copies of the other 3, and I also have, for some reason, SP 800-100.
Okay.
I don't know if that's just because that's what the ISOs gave me, or because I just, before I waste my time getting too into the weeds into those, I want to do what's best.
You don't want to read them like a
for
novel and just read them for the sake of reading them, because that's not really productive per se. But you got to know like how to filter the documents and get out of it what you need as quickly as possible, because once we go through them in this class one time, the rest of your life it's more or less a reference. I mean, I would recommend not reading them once you leave here. Don't think I'm going to go back to work and let's read 400 pages of this documentation. It probably won't be the best use of your time, but being able to have them handy, reference them, and reference certain language in it is going to be very important. Like, for example, when it says, the CIO is ultimately responsible. Well, where do you just go in there and find that language that we can say, hey, here you go, there's the document, this is what we need to be doing. And just reading for the sake of reading is not going to get you to that level. Because you'll read 5 pages and be like, this is horrible, and, it's not a novel, there's no excitement, there's no drama, and you'll put it down. And you'll never go back to it again, and
well, that's what happened. I tried with
altogether.
837 before, and I got about halfway and went, oh, no, this is not working.
Right, or what I ended up doing is I had this stuff printed out, I put it in a binder, and I had it at work. And then every time something came up that I thought was referenced to part of the life cycle, I would go read that section again. And because I was specifically interested in trying to see, well, what does this say about this?
Okay.
And so I had a purpose of going into the documents, and I would, I'd read that one little section and go, okay, I get it. And then you can tolerate, reading the documents because you're just eating it in bite-sized chunks.
So the biggest thing to concentrate on then for the test prep would be
the core understanding the material. Some of it's test question strategy. In other words, the IAC triad helps a lot, and the principles. And that's really, really, really important in my opinion. Right? Because you could take all the test questions you could possibly find. That doesn't mean that you're going to pass the exam. So, like a Security Plus, you can, some of these, not to isolate Security Plus, but there are exams that you can basically brain dump your way through. This is not one of those exams. You have to be able to think, which is why I spend so much time relating this material to what we do at work and what we should be doing at work. So that way when you're reading the question, you can say, okay, let me stop, let me step back. This is how this works in my work environment, that's how that works in my environment. That answer is wrong. Okay, that doesn't sound right. And now I got 2 answers left. Let me double check a couple things in the question. Okay, the best answer here is C. It's that process and the core understanding together that will ultimately get you to this and drive this test home. Which is why I do a different format in this class. Alright, gap analysis. 60 and 53. Alright, categorization. From the pool of collective wisdom. you can't possibly know how much to protect a system until you know the value of that system. And Albert Einstein, one of my favorites, everything that can be counted does not necessarily count, and everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted. I love that guy. I love motivational quotes and stuff, and it, when in the physical world, when we get out of tune, we go on a diet, right? When you're not happy with yourself, you go on a diet. Most people neglect that mental side of it, so I call it mental diets. So like you have to put positive thoughts in your head, because as soon as you hit the news, as soon as you're in traffic, all positive thoughts escape you altogether. So this mental diet of things like the pool collectivism and Albert Einstein, and some of my favorites are Benjamin Franklin or Stephen Covey. It helps with that mental diet. And the reason why I bring that up here is because you're going to go back to work and it's going to feel like the world's against you, and it's real easy to go, this isn't working and this is frustrating, but I have to move mountains, and that's where the mental diet comes in to keep your head in the right place. Alright, so process one, categorization. Alright, so we hit this basically with the risk management framework, categorizing our controls. So we're going to move past that. We're going to look at a little bit at categorization, information system descriptions, and the registration. Now yesterday we talked about what registration actually meant, so what's it mean?
What does registration mean?
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging something has to be
Acknow-
done.
Yeah, acknowledging the system, and that it's basically you're accountable for it. It's in your place. You're doing the process to get your authorization packages, and you get your packages accredited. But you gotta do a lot of work to get there first. All right, so the system description, right? The description, describe the information setting, including the system boundary. What was the boundary? Another word similar to that that begins with an S. It's kind of like mouthwash.
Scope.
Yeah. It basically, and the scope of the document into the security plan, so that way you know exactly what you're protecting, what your protection boundary is. The detail can be different, but ideally we'd like things like full descriptive name, unique name for the system, typically a system identified number or code. You're always going to need to know who the system owner is. And I would even say information owner / system owner, right? That relationship that we talked about. Because again, that could be, the information owner could be a parent or a governing organization, et cetera, Location of the system, what the environment it's in, version and release numbers. Now, that's worth noting a second too, because patch management has come a long way in the last 7 years. I mean, you were 7 to 10 years ago, and you ask yourself, what are the patch versions? What are the versions of all of the operating systems of all of my assets? That question was nearly impossible to get an answer for. There's just no way to do it. And by the time you did figure it out, it was already outdated because patches change. In the last 7 years, we actually have a subject called patch management that became really, really big in 2000, 2005. And so the vendor started developing software, and you've got software like Tivoli, which is a pretty popular
We used to
application.
use it. I don't know if we still do or not.
All
They
right.
would push out desktop changes using Tivoli.
Yeah,
We could
that is
control
very
when
common.
we could remote control into a desktop, like when I was doing electronic messaging, we would Tivoli into the desktop rather than trying to go through the 20 questions with the user who wasn't understanding what we were asking. It would be, can you give me permission to remote control your PC? And they could see what we're doing. They're just, and we would do various.
Does it help us?
It was actually electronic messaging operations,
Okay.
but yeah, but I don't know if they still do it that way or not. That was 8 years ago.
Maybe. purpose, functions, and capabilities, how the information system is integrated in the enterprise architecture, what's the purpose, the status of the information with respect to life cycle. Do you have your approvals to operate? Do you have interims? Results of any sort of categorization and those processes for the system. Types of the information processed, stored, or transmitted to and from that machine. So basically data in transit or data at rest or data that is being processed. And basically the only three that you have. Any sort of boundary or scope information, any sort of applicable laws, directive policies, and that's going to typically be a background statement. Hey, why are we doing this? Well, per so-and-so, this is why we need to do this. Any architectural information, network topology, for example, you could even do generically token ring versus Ethernet, but you get the idea. Any sort of hardware, software, or firmware of that system. And then the registration of the information system. The registration provides the organization with effective managing and tracking tool because, again, it's a formal acknowledgement saying, hey, this is our stuff. Let's not forget FIPS 199, and let's look at 860. We went through FIPS 199. We saw the objective of that, the impact levels. What are impact levels? What are the actual things that you, what's your impact? Yellow, medium, high. Security categorization, that would be your SSC generically, or like AU for auditing, CP for contingency planning, etc. Type of information and types of systems. But 860 is the mapping types to the category. So let's look at 800. Let's look at 860. And that's 800-60. And this is actually a Rev 1. Alright, so whenever I open the NIST document, I always go to the table of contents first, because basically that's your map or to the document. So it's going to have your same stuff, target audience, relationships, and things like that. And then the publication overview, security categorization of the information systems, the assignment of the impact levels. Alright, so per FSMA, per law, E-Government Act, FSMA, and according to NIST, we're doing this because FIPS 199 classification system. Alright, the identification of the information processed on an information system is essential to the proper security control selection, ensuring that the IAC triad, CIA is of the system and its information on that system. So NIST has developed federal government agencies to categorize information systems. So this is basically our categorization document. Why are we doing this? Per FSMA. We're going to look at information, and these should be related to the IAC triad, information system and information systems. This would be the WHO, individuals with information systems, security management, oversight responsibilities, anybody with a vested interest in it, anybody with development responsibilities, or operational responsibilities. You guys see how I process that very, very quickly? Instead of reading it, I find the things like the bullets, and I scan for the keyword differences. So I was, for example, in number 3 here, basically the meat of that is development responsibilities, and they give an example. Operational responsibilities on the next one, and then they give the examples. So I can process it because I pretty much know how these documents are written. Spend enough time on it, get the idea. And of course we are related to FIPS 199 and FIPS 200. FIPS 199 is the standard, and FIPS 200 is the minimum for federal systems. All of the other related documents, 830, which is a risk management guide, 37, that's your CNA, 39, managing risk. There's a handful of risk documents that NIST has. and just like we process these relatively quickly, it wouldn't take you too long to process the rest of them. So knowing the differences between, 39 versus 30, and the reason why I say that is because, again, you go to most curriculums and it's always the shortest chapter is the risk chapter. But NIST actually provides lots of documents, in retrospect to a lot of the curriculums, lots of documents on risk. So you can actually use those documents to get really good information. They're not procedure oriented, they're not going to tell you how to do it, but they'll tell you what it is. They'll give you the what, in some cases the where it's applicable or scope, or the why because of the laws, but they won't give you the how. That's up to you. And that's what a framework is. It gives you the framework to do the stuff, but it doesn't exactly tell you how. So it's principle-based, not procedure-based, which you can actually use that to eliminate wrong answers when you practice tests, because you would expect your answers to be more either life cycle oriented or framework oriented rather than procedural oriented. So like an example off the top of my head using generic stuff would be, answer A is you use an integrity check versus answer B, which is use MD5. Both of them are integrity oriented, but one's general and principle oriented and one is specific and procedurally oriented. For example, I could go to the command prompt here, do a directory, and I should have the MD5 sum utility installed, and I have a password.txt file. So this is a specific procedure. If I wanted to verify the integrity of that document, password.txt, I could do an MD5 sum password.txt, and it gives me the integrity checksum value for that file. Okay, and here's a lab that I do to separate integrity versus confidentiality. If I go to that document and I open this, what have I just done? According to the IAC triad, I've shown it to you, so according to the IAC triad, I just violated something.
Confidentiality.
Yeah.
Because you don't share passwords.
Right, I don't share passwords, but I've just disclosed it to you, right? So I violated confidentiality.
Except the fact that's a crappy password.
Nonetheless.
At least by most standards.
But what
That's
happened?
one of the most common passwords.
Exactly why it's a crappy password.
But what happens when
Along with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
But what happens when I go back to the integrity algorithm and I run it again? Am I going to get the same integrity value or a different integrity value?
Uh-huh.
This is the trick.
Wait.
The question is I ran an integrity check on it,
Okay.
which is the principle of integrity, and then I disclosed the document and violated confidentiality. So what happens if I go to another integrity check? Do I get the same value or a different value?
Same thing.
He says same value. You say,
I'll say
let's
same.
try it again. We get the same thing.
Okay.
So even though I violated confidentiality,
Right.
integrity has been preserved because the document has not been, go to your keywords, modified, altered, changed,
Deleted.
nothing was added, nothing was deleted, right? So I can disclose it, I can violate confidentiality, but integrity is still preserved. So let's go prove some others. So I can do this 1,000 times. I can confidentiality violated, confidentiality violated, confidentiality violated. Come back here, integrity's fine. The whole time. Never once did the integrity change. Now, when I open the document and I add a space in, and I save it. So I violated confidentiality, you can see the space there, but I also added a space, which is basically nothing. Now what happens? It's going to change. And I always go with the last two because that's easy. So these were all F0s, this is 0C. Now what happens if I go back to the document, violate the confidentiality, take the space out, and click save? What's going to happen to the document? Am I going to get the original one back? Am I going to get the one with the space in it, or am I going to get a new value?
No.
I got one new and one original. And if you said original, you were correct.
Oh, okay.
Because what I did is, even though I changed it back to that exact same state of integrity. So it's been changed, but it was changed back. So at the point when I analyze it, it was exactly the same, so the integrity check still comes out. right? And just so I knock this out of the park, right? Make that longer this time. Run my integrity check, and of course we're going to get a new one, and it is a new one. But what the important part is that the output is the exact same size every single time. In computer lingo, that would be a variable length input, fixed length output. Does not matter what the size of does not matter the size of the document whatsoever. It's just going to analyze it, give you an output. Analyze it and get an output. And those outputs are what you compare. You have to compare the outputs, and if they're the same, they have integrity. If it's not the same, then you don't have integrity. And it should make sense that in the IAC triad, that when I run an integrity check, I can't change the document while I'm running the integrity check, or the exact check in itself would violate its own integrity. So all I can do is look at it, run an algorithm through it, and basically get a number as an output, but I cannot change, modify, alter anything else in that process. When you're encrypting and decrypting with confidentiality, you do change things. You change it from language that you can read to language that you can't read. But with integrity, when you just run algorithms against it, it does not change the data in the process. So I proved in this case that confidentiality and integrity have nothing to do with each other. In many cases, they're polar opposites. I can disclose the documents to you all day long. Integrity, he says, well, as long as it wasn't changed, I'm fine. Right? So you prove this fundamental difference in that, and I use keywords as a shortcut. But you can actually prove all of this. So in here, security categorization process, the information types, lines of business, selecting impact levels, adjusting them, and assigning them to categories. So I want to get into a little bit of that meat when it comes to this document. This just goes over the sections and the chapters, glossary references. So according to the Federal Enterprise Architecture, that's a little bit of background information. Value to the agency and the missions. This is again more background information, but hey, if you're classifying your systems, there should be value in that, or at least the information that you're evaluating. That should have, will always have value. FIT 199, impact analysis as an agency-wide exercise. So who does FIPS 199 apply to? Whole agency. Okay. With the participation of key officials such as the Chief Information Officer. Why?
Because he's ultimately accountable.
He's ultimately accountable, and then the Senior Agency Information Security Officer. That's going to be the counter work that you'll probably work with for security, so that to keep the CIO out of prison, right? I always like the tips in here. Some of them are helpful, more helpful than others. But basically, if you do the appropriate level of mission support and you're providing diligent, you basically do your due diligence, not only but current, but also future information security requirements, you'll get a better product. In short, I think it's Papa John's that says, better ingredients make a better pizza? That's basically what you're trying to get out of here. You have a better process, you'll get a better result. So in this case, process matters, right? Some people think let's just look at the results, right? But the process matters. If you're in a circular racetrack and the first one to go across the finish line wins, and the one guy takes off and the other guy just backs up a foot and then walks a foot forward, he technically crossed the finish line first. So we got the results, but he violated the process. So process matters, especially when it comes to this stuff. And you can even use certification and accreditation, of course, in critical infrastructure protection, just as a specific, somewhat current event. It has a role in the risk management framework, right? Again, we got life cycle, and of course we're going to cross-reference that. They actually reference the life cycle. They explain it. You can skip that part because we did it yesterday. Then section 3, security categorization of the information system. Basically saying that 860 maps the information types, but hey, that's the name of the document. a little blurb here on FSMA and 199 in terms of confidentiality, integrity, and available. FSMA defines confidentiality, integrity, and availability. FIPS is the impact levels. Your impact levels, low, medium, high. But again, watch the language. Limited adverse effect, serious adverse effect, or severe or catastrophic adverse effect. Basically, if there's life on the line, it's going to be high. Alright, so these are all the potentials. And again, we saw the security categorization as listed in FIPS to get your acceptable rating. Now, let's get into the meat of this, about halfway through the document before we actually get into the purpose of this. So that's another reason why not to read these things page by page. If I was reading this, I'd probably be on page 2 right now, but because I'm highlighting it, looking for the keywords, I'm on page 12. And notice it's only a 24-page document, so it's relatively not too bad. So the assignment, right? Have you ever heard of something called SciPoc? Okay, that's recycled from 6 Sigma and worth writing down because you can look at just about every. It's basically process analysis. So SIPOC, it's the supplier, the input, the process in itself, the output, and then customer. Right? So